You're watching CBS Sports HQ. The 2026 PGA Tour schedule gets underway this week in paradise. It's there on your screen. The 2026 Sony Open tees off in Hawaii beginning this Thursday. The season opener comes just a week later than in the past after the Century was canceled. There were some course concerns. It was not playable. Russell Henley gets the early lean from our team at Sportsline as far as the favorite to win. But as I mentioned, January going to be very busy. Get back to the green when it comes to golf. So for the first time in 2026, let's set the stage of the delayed but not denied start to the PGA Tour. We've got our guys, our golf analyst Patrick McDonald, alongside our betting analyst, golf analyst Sia Nejad. Good to see you guys. Let's talk about the course here. We got highs in the low 80s, some rain chances kind of scattered throughout the weekend, but otherwise hard to beat the backdrop for this season opener. That is Hawaii. Patrick, just lay out the course specs for us of what this field can expect.
It's honestly one of my favorite on the PGA Tour. We got an old school Seth Rayner design, bunch of here in the Carolinas, so really appreciate it when it's on your TV late night. And it's a classical par 70 golf course. It's really a fun layout where both of the par 5s finish each 9. So you have the par 5 9th and the par 5 18th, which sets up 4 exciting finishes. And then it's not really your typical PGA Tour stop just because it is kind of old school, right? Accuracy is the name of the game. They've grown the rough up, so it's pretty difficult to play out of that sticky Bermuda rough. Tough to judge some of those lies, and we've had some really good finishes at this golf course in recent memory. 6 out of the last 10 events have gone to playoffs. We remember last year Nick Taylor chipping in for eagle to force his way into the playoffs. So really, if you're looking to identify guys who will play well, Russell Henley, as the Sportsline team has laid out, this is kind of his type of ballpark, right? Put the ball in the fairway, feast with the mid irons around 150, 175 yards and see who can make the most putts. But it really is, despite the technological advances in the game with equipment, one of the better golf courses we see on the PGA Tour over the year.
No surprise that Patrick McDonald boldfaces Russell Henley, one of his favorite golfers. But I do think he's a pretty good course fit here, Haley. The bottom line is, it's interesting that Patrick brings up accuracy. Normally, I wouldn't really be looking at accuracy quite as much. We've seen some, quote, inaccurate guys off the tee succeed here. With that said, it does appear that they've grown up the rough a little bit. But either way, I'm really looking at approach and putting metrics. We see at this tournament, greens in regulation not going to be hard to come by because the greens are so big, but getting near the pin, that's what I'm looking at. And so those distances from 125 to 200, for example, those mid irons, that's going to be really important to focus on those golfers that are really dialed in from those proximities. And again, if you can spike with your putter, you've got a very good chance to win here. One thing to monitor is the wind. It doesn't look like it's going to be extreme, but it will affect the golfers, will affect the scoring just a little bit, but that's something certainly to monitor.
Let's get into the field here because it includes 7 of the world's top 20 players. Names like Colin Morikawa, Hideki Matsuyama, JJ Spaun, and Jordan Spieth. But Patrick, in reading and preparing for this segment, it kind of feels like people in the golf world are not exactly excited about this field of golfers that's starting the year. I mean, we know Scottie Scheffler is going to debut later this year. We don't know when we'll see Rory McIlroy. How are you feeling about this opening event? Excuse me, my brain stalled there for a second. The field for the opening event in the PGA Tour.
Well, I think first, people in the golf community are just kind of bummed that we're not seeing Kapalua, the Century. It's really an easy first step for these guys to get into their season with how wide those landing areas are. You see a bunch of birdies, which I know some people don't like, but some people do like too. But I feel like there's a little bit of an added intensity to this version of the Sony Open, just given with what's going on with the PGA Tour, with some of the membership changes, with the upcoming schedule changes, whether that's in 2027, 2028. And so I think that's why you do have 7 out of the top 20. And one guy I'm looking at, not only this week, but throughout 2026, I think he's one of the more intriguing names, is Keegan Bradley. I mean, the U.S. Ryder Cup captain was more or less set up for failure by the PGA of America in 2025, not only as a captain, but as a player. And despite that, Keegan Bradley played like a top 10 player in the world in 2025. He contended in major championships. He won the Travelers Championship over Tommy Fleetwood and Russell Henley. He is so much sharper chipping and pitching the ball right now, too. And you add that in with how good his ball striking has been throughout his career. And I'm really curious to see if Keegan Bradley, with that cloud of the Ryder Cup now past him, if he can keep his good playing going, because at age 39, I think he still has one more chance to play himself on that Ryder Cup team in 2027. And I think it starts this week and it starts throughout 2026.
Yeah, if we're talking about guys that might have a little bit of extra pressure like Keegan Bradley might, I can only look at Colin Morikawa. I mean, this is a guy who turned pro in 2019, and his star could not have been brighter as of, let's say, 2020 when he won the PGA Championship, or 2021 when he won the Open Championship. But you look at what Colin's done over the last 3 years. He's won once at the Zozo, which is now, of course, the Bay Current Classic. I really feel like Colin needs to show the ability. Now, he's had good years. In 2025, it started off really well. He lost to Russell Henley at the API, and that was a very unfortunate set of circumstances for him. And in 2024, he was good, but he didn't win. I think Colin Morikawa needs to show the world that he can close. Or, honestly, Patrick's on the show. I always rib him. This is like the Mike Tomlin of the PGA Tour. This is a guy who won early. His star was super bright. And all of a sudden, we're not sure if Colin's going to win anytime soon. He can't seem to close. Sorry, Patrick.
It feels a little soon for Colin. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like the comparison, though. You were talking to you, and I was like, well, you're not wrong. A lot to monitor there. Both of these guys certainly with something to prove in this upcoming year here. What about a guy like J.J. Spaun, the world #6, hoping to set the tone again in 2026? It was really special for him last year. He enters the Sony Open as the second highest ranked player in the world, behind Russell Henley, who, of course, is the favorite to win this one. Patrick, how does that momentum carry over for him?
You know, it feels like J.J. Spaun and Ben Griffin have kind of been lugged together just given their rises in 2025. But I think Spaun has some substantial staying power inside the top 10, inside the top 15 of the world over these next couple of years, just because of that comfort level. You look at the statistics. Yes, he became a better iron player. He got longer off the tee. He made more putts. But I go back to that Players Championship playoff loss to Rory McIlroy and what he took out of that. He mentioned how he felt comfortable alongside someone like Rory McIlroy. And then you go from March throughout the rest of 2025. He obviously won the U.S. Open. He hit some big-time shots down the stretch of the St. Jude Championship, losing to Justin Rose in that playoff. And then he was one of the bright spots, I thought, for the U.S. team at Bethpage Black. He's coming off a really good start there at the Hero World Challenge. I think statistically this is a great course fit for him. He nearly was in that playoff last year with Nico and Nick Taylor also. So I think he does build off that momentum in 2025. And I love rooting for a guy like J.J. Spaun, someone who figures it out a little bit later, someone in his mid-30s, and hopefully he can roll that over closer when he turns to 40 as well.
Yeah, I think he can build off that momentum as well, if not maintain the momentum, because he did so well last year. I don't know if he has a ton to, quote, improve upon with taking down another major, for example, second at the Players. But what I will say about J.J. Spaun is he's shown an ability to close on Sundays, even in that second place finish at the Players. I mean, this guy shows up on Sunday, and it's a long course, it's a short course, easy, tough. He has shown the ability to figure it out on any course, and I think that is something that has major staying power.
All right, on the opposite side of the spectrum here, it's been a struggle, to say the least, for Jordan Spieth. Just hasn't been right since having surgery back in 2024. The three-time champion comes into this one ranked 51st in the world, the first time he's been outside the top 50 since March of 2021. But this is your guy, Patrick. He's trying to keep a positive mentality going into the season here. Back in November, he talked about his health. He said, quote, "I'm healthy. I'm stronger than I've been in a long time." He told this to the Golf Channel again back in November of 2025. He went on to say, "I wasn't able to get things right where I wanted them to be, and now I've got 5 months to get them set in stone." So obviously the months have passed. We are expecting big things here. Patrick, what is the key to getting right for Jordan Spieth in 26?
I think it's twofold, Haley. I think a lot of people will say the iron play, he needs to return to peak iron play, Jordan Spieth. I honestly tend to disagree with those people. I look at his putting in particular, and you say, okay, well, it was his best strokes gained putting season since 2021. That's not the issue. But if you actually dive into the numbers, Jordan Spieth is putrid from inside 10 feet in particular. He's below tour average from inside 10 feet. He's below tour average from 4 to 8 feet. And he's in the 25th percentile from 2 to 5 feet. And I think that is so important for a player like Spieth, who is more or less a momentum type player. We think about his heroic par saves, getting out of jail from no man's land pretty much, and being able to roll that momentum into the next few holes. Like, I understand how fun it is to watch Jordan Spieth shoot even par with 6 par, 6 bogeys, and 6 birdies. but that putter in particular can make up for a lot of those mistakes. And then the second part, I think, is just as important. Nothing tangible, but it's the intangibles. It's what's going on in between the ears for Jordan Spieth. He's now 32 years old. It's going to be 9 years since he won that Open at Royal Birkdale when we go back there this summer. Since then, Jordan Spieth has only won 2 times on the PGA Tour in almost 9 years. That is not good enough for a player of his caliber. And I think a lot of that has to do with what's going on in between the ears. We've seen these last few years how bad breaks or poor shots kind of trickle into his next shot and really affect key stretches of his round. I think he needs to figure it out. I've been told he's been working with some people to try to figure that out. And if he does those 2 things, I think Spieth can return to being a top 15, top 20 player in the world.
Many people are saying Jordan Spieth is the Mike Tomlin. No, I'm kidding, of course. Injuries. I think injuries explain, sorry, Patch. I think injuries explain a lot of what's going on here with Jordan Spieth. And I expect him to, quote, revive his career to some degree and really splash the pot with some good finishes, even in 2026. He got a wrist injury. You've got late in the season last year or late summer, he had the neck and the back issue. Prior to that, he was actually showing up. I do agree it's the short game that's the problem. The putter and the around the green play hasn't been pristine for Jordan Spieth, but usually when you're coming back from injuries, maybe like that's the last thing that typically comes around. So I expect Jordan Spieth to show up in 2026.
I want to get Sia and Mike Tomlin in the same room together. Like, that's it. That's all I want at the end of the early wedge. Is like those 2 guys just having a nice conversation. Patrick and Sia, hang tight for us. We got more to talk about when it comes to the Sony Open coming later this week. We've given you the storylines. We've told you who to watch, who has what to prove. Now we're going to help you cash in. We've got best bets when it comes to the golf after the break. PGA Tour 2026 edition begins later this week with the Sony Open. Taking a look at the odds to win it all. Russell Henley with the shortest at 11-1 there up at the top. You can never count out Hideki Matsuyama, though. He's got second shortest there at plus 1,600. A handful of familiar names on this list that could make some noise. We just talked with the fellas, Keegan Bradley, Colin Morikawa, 2 guys our experts are expecting to have, hopefully, a bounce-back year. But let's help you make some money. We're back here with the boys, Sia Nejad and Patrick McDonald, as we count down to the Sony Open out in Honolulu. So let's get started by making some money. We're going to start with our DFS lineup. Sia, it is your time to shine, or run us through those sleepers to cash in on.
Yeah, let's talk some sleepers, Haley and Patrick. I'm going to go with some guys down the board. That's what sleepers are, right? We're going to go with Eric Cole, who's been pretty good here the last couple of years. And again, we talked about it a little bit ago. I'm looking for approach and putting, or at least the ability to get hot with the approach and the putting. Eric Cole is definitely one of those guys. He's not going to win any tournaments off the tee. He may not need to do that here. Next, we go to Mac Meisner, 9,300 here at FanDuel. And Meisner is a guy that's really jumping off the page to me. He's shown upside at the Wyndham Championship, and the ball striking metrics are really good. He's also shown an ability to pop with the putter. So I really like that. The really biggest sleeper here, probably, the guy that's somewhere between 100 and 140 to 1, depending on where you look, is Seamus Power. Now, he's got very erratic history at the Sony Open, but he did have one finish where he was T3. The problem with Seamus Power is he's never been good at Waialae on approach. That's a big problem. Here's the thing. Over the fall swing, which I understand it is the fall swing, he seemed to have found something on approach. So if I'm right about that, and he can marry those approach metrics here at Waialae, I think he's a guy that has a shot to maybe even top 20 this tournament, could even win as a super long shot.
I like the power play. See, I lost plenty of money on him over that fall swing you were mentioning. I'm kind of looking in that same price range. I really like Ryan Gerard this week and this year in general. This guy has a ton of confidence. He's getting his second full season on the PGA Tour. Over the winter break, he went to Mauritius on the DP World Tour, finished second there, punched his ticket into the Masters, has a ton of game. And when we were talking with him, he was telling me how much he loves these Seth Rayner old school designs. Well, that's what we have this week at Waialae, so I love him at 8.9. And then Kita Nakajima is a name I would get used to if you are a golf fan. He played on the DP World Tour last year, earned his card by finishing inside the top 10 of the race to Dubai, has a ton of game, a young man from Japan. He was on Mark Immelman's Arnold Palmer Cup team a few years back as well, has a ton of confidence too. He's been on the big stage playing in major championships, so he has a really nice blend of accuracy and that putting that Sia mentioned. And then anytime you're going to have a ton of mid irons in your hand, I think you have to consider Tom Hoge. His driver was a major issue in 2025, but I think luckily at Waialae, you can kind of scale back a little bit and try to play that accuracy game. And if he does, Hoagie has found success at these shorter golf courses and has a chance to do the same this week too.
How about a top 20 lock, Sia? What are you looking at?
Let's go Keegan Bradley, top 20 at -130, of course, at FanDuel. That's including ties. I think this guy's getting slept on a little bit as a guy that has a chance to win here. He is one of the better players in this tournament that has shown, I don't know if willingness is the right word, but a penchant to show up ready for these early season tournaments. And that's manifested itself in a T6, T2, missed cut in T12 over his last 4 trips at the Sony Open. I just like the form he's in. I mean, frankly, he hasn't played much over the fall swing, but it's the form he's in at the Sony Open specifically. He seemed to have figured it out over his last 2 tries. He's gained pretty dramatically across all strokes gained metrics.
Similar part of the odds board for me, see, I'm going with JJ Spaun, can find it around even money, and this is just a perfect fit for him and what JJ Spaun likes to do. He likes to hit that tight fade out into the middle of the fairway. He's a top 10 iron player on the PGA Tour. He has that zero torque putter working really, really well over the last half of this season, and he's coming off a really good start there at the Hero World Challenge where he was in contention, another coastal kind of golf course too. So he figured this place out last year, finished a stroke outside the playoff. I think Spaun is ripe for another really good year on the PGA Tour, and I think it starts this week with at least a top 20 finish.
All right, so we go from a lock to a long shot next. Patrick, who's the guy with the longest top 10 odds you're taking?
I really like Matt McCarty this week. We talked to him over the break as well, and he mentioned an underrated aspect that isn't really talked about much on the PGA Tour, is rookies seeing these golf courses for the first time. And McCarty's a guy who in 2026, he's going to see all these golf courses for the second time. And that helps early in the week with preparation. It helps during the week on the confidence scale too. And McCarty is a guy who's a great driver of the golf ball, really good mid-iron player. And his bread and butter, in my opinion, is the putter. He can make it from just about any which way on the greens. He had a really good fall swing too, contending in Utah, almost broke 60 there in Japan as well. And so I think McCarty is a guy who has potential to win this golf tournament, his second PGA Tour win it would be, and definitely finish inside the top 10.
This is the type of tournament where really anybody can succeed, any type of game can succeed, and it's an easier course, which I think brings some of the people in the back of the pack in play, especially when you're talking about top 20s or top 10s. I'm going right back to Seamus Power at plus 700 again. He's shown the ability to spike with the approach and the putting play, and he's shown the ability to spike at this tournament with the T3. Granted, the other finishing positions weren't great at the Sony, but again, he's seen it here before, and he's coming in with good form. I'll take plus 700 on a top 10 long shot.
Of course, he was also on your DFS sleeper list there too, so we're real high on Power there. Let's get to some guys to stay away from this week. Patrick, who's your top 5 fade this weekend?
I'm curious about Colin Morikawa. I think on paper, it's a really great course fit. We've been talking about accuracy. We've been talking about iron play. That is Colin Morikawa to a T, but he has this weird obsession with trying to get his iron play back to what it was like in 2020 and 2021. And long term, I think that's kind of a losing battle. He was a really good iron player on the PGA Tour last year. He finished 3rd in strokes gained approach in 2025, behind only Scottie Scheffler and Victor Hovland. But the short game in the putting has a really long way to go. And so I think we're still going to see those ceiling performances from Colin Morikawa when the iron play is really clicking and he doesn't really have to rely on that short game. But I am a little curious what those floor performances are going to look like for him when that iron play is a little bit haywire, when the wind starts to pick up. And so because of that, I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach with Morikawa, and that starts this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Siwoo Kim to fade here. I just don't know that Siwoo Kim's a great golfer. He's won here before, but I just don't think he belongs with the people that are in the top 5. I mean, top 10, I would be willing to accept, but when you look at who's in the top 5, and let's just throw Colin in there too, but we got Henley, we got Decky, we got Ben Griffin, JJ Spaun. I mean, Siwoo Kim hasn't won in a while, and I just don't think from a win equity standpoint, he belongs at the odds that he's at.
So no Colin Morikawa, no Siwoo Kim. Stay away from those guys. Let's get a pick to win. Sia, I'll give you first word here. Who's winning the Sony Open?
Yeah, you're going to hear another name that you heard a few minutes ago. It's Keegan Bradley. I was actually debating between Keegan Bradley and Hideki Matsuyama, and certainly I'll have some long shots on the early wedge, which I do with Patrick and Jason Sobel and Eric Cohen later tonight. But the long and short of it is Keegan is in really good form at the Sony. T6, T2 over his last two, and again, gaining across all strokes gain metrics. He's the type of person that I think is showing up at Waialae expecting to win, expecting to at least be there on Sunday. And I think 20-1 is a pretty good number here.
Well, I'll take your other guy, Sia. I'll take Hideki Matsuyama. He quietly has multiple win seasons in 3 out of the last 4 years. He has more than 10 wins in the months of January and February combined. He just won the Hero World Challenge. He's won this golf tournament before, too. I'm not going to overthink it at this point with it being the first event of the season. So give me Matsuyama, a guy who really wins a lot, and I think has a great chance to do so again this week.
There you go. It worked out well, Sia. So if your prediction of Keegan Bradley doesn't go, you just peek off of Patrick's there, and you're a double winner there. I like to see it. Fellas, busy season begins now for you guys. We appreciate your time here on CBS Sports HQ. Plenty more putrid putting, Mike Tomlin references maybe, all can be found on the Early Wedge podcast. Get ready for all the golf action by scanning that QR code on your screen.